is a work of art? Today we'll be diving into one of the most frustrating questions about art. What is a work of art? What makes art art? This question has been baffling in the minds of the philosophers trying to pin down a definition to it. So, in the book Introduction to the Philosophies by Richard Hobson, Miles, and Andrew Brody, it talks about what makes art art. What is a work of art? So they take us on 6 major attempts in trying to pin down this definition. So by the 1950s, most of the philosophers admit that there are no necessary and sufficient conditions for art. So instead of defining art, we define it like a game, as the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein pointed out on. Like board games, card games, ball games, they don't share one single trait. They share the family resemblances, and art is the same way. But that doesn't stop us from trying. Let us break down the 6 main theories and see where they crack. So the first one, the mirror and the message, representation. So the oldest theory is mimesis or imitation, and this goes back to ancient Greece. The idea is simple. Art is a mirror held up to nature. Plato believed art imitates reality, but he didn't like it. He thought physical objects were just copies of perfect abstract forms. So remember, Plato always talked about the word of forms. So a painting of a bed is a copy of a copy. I thrice remove the sequence. So the analogy here is like, imagine the form of the bed, the abstract form in the mind. You have the thought of the bed. So that abstract form is like the original song in the computer. So when you burn the disc, it becomes a copy of the original. And so when it is played, it is a copy of the copy. So there is a degraded copy of a copy. So Plato made thought about this as deceptive and irrational. So the evolution comes when John Locke and others shifted to representation. They argued that art isn't just a mirror, it's a delivery truck, for example. It transports an idea from the artist's mind to the audience's mind. So the problem here points out that if art is just about representing reality or sending a message, abstract art breaks the rule. Abstract. So consider Joseph Kossuth's art, 1 and 3 chairs. The artwork displays a physically real chair, an image of the chair, and a definition of the chair, those 3 standing by each other as an art. So it isn't trying to be a window into reality. It is an analytic approach about art. It's like if an art stops acting like a mirror and starts acting like a philosophy textbook, delivering all the abstract ideas, then the imitation theory fails. Second point, it's not what it means, it's how it looks, and this is called formalism. So in the 20th century, critics like Clive Bell and Roger Fry flipped the script. They argued, forget about the message, look at the lines, this is formalism. So to a formalist, painting isn't good because it looks like a person. It's good because of its significant form, the specific arrangement of lines, colors, and shapes that triggers a special attention for the ecstatic emotion. So another example, think about music. You don't ask, when someone's playing a chord in a song, you don't ask, what does this chord represent? What does this minor chord represent? You just feel the flow of the structure. You feel the harmony of the song. So in the same way, the formalists, they want you to look at paintings just like the way you listen to music. It is purely for the harmony and less for the structure. So it is ignoring the outside world. So the problem with this is that the authors point out that you can't actually separate form from the world. If we look at one of the art from Helio or Nuclei, it's a series of hanging geometric walls, panels, box that you can walk through, you can interact, like you fully immerse yourself in that art. It engages the architecture of the room and the viewer's body. It refuses to be just an image on the wall. It wanted to exist in a context. The third problem, let it out. Expressionism or expression. If it's not the form, maybe it's the feeling. This brings us to expressionism. So the theory here, Leo Tolstoy defines art as a transmission of feeling. The artist feels sadness and puts it to a poem, and then you read it and you feel sad. You feel the same feelings. It's a transmission of feelings. So then the example for this is that art can be like some sort of a virus that is infected with an emotion and uses the artwork to infect the other audiences. So the evolution of this theory later on was introduced by R.G. Collingwood, and he argued that art is how we clarify vague feelings into knowing what we feel. But in the 1950s, Harold Rosenberg described action painting. He saw the canvas not as a picture, but as an area or an arena for an event. The problem with this theory is that it gets messy with performance art. Think of Herman Nietzsche and Stuart Brisley, who vomited in gallery as art. If you see some other art today, you can see bodily expression. So this isn't just transmitting a sad feeling, like Tolstoy wanted. It's a biological social rupture. As Deleuze argued, expression here becomes an assemblage of bodies and forces, not just a simple emotion passing from person A to person B. The fourth problem, or theory, the proper distance, aesthetic attitude. Some philosophers stop looking at the object and start looking at the viewer. This is aesthetic attitude. Art is whatever we look at with disinterestedness. Imagine you are a judge in a court case. You must be impartial. You must not be biased. You can't care if the defendant is your friend or your relative. You only care about the facts. So similarly, disinterestedness means you look at an object without caring what it can do for you, but you just care about how it looks. So the problem with this theory is that this view is accused of being elitist. So the sociologist Pierre Bourdieu argued that the pure gaze is a luxury for the wealthy who don't have to worry about basic needs. So another example for this is the 1972 exhibition named The Woman House. So the feminine artist Journey House into an installation about menstruation, gender roles, and domestic labor. So that kind of art demands you to be interested. It wanted you to get angry or political, It refused to be looked at with disinterestedness. The fifth problem, the fifth theory. If we can't define art by how it feels, maybe we define it by who grants it. And this is the institutional theory. So, philosopher George Dickey and Arthur Danto argue that art is whatever the art world says it is. So, here's an example. What makes a person a knight? Is it because they are brave or they have this charming armor? It's because the queen tapped on their shoulders the sword. So the institution becomes the one conferring status. So similarly, a urinal is just plumping until the artwork taps it with a sword and dubs it art. So the problem with this theory is that it struggles with rebels. The chapter discusses institutional critique, where artists like Hans Hack expose the corruption of museums. So the digital shift for modern days is that, according to Walter Benjamin, he predicted that technology would destroy the aura of elite art. Today, digital memes and internet art bypass the art of art world entirely. Art is being defined from the bottom up, and not just by the kings and queens of the museum. And the sixth theory is anti-essentialism. So what is the answer? The author concludes with the theory of anti-essentialism. So this theory is relying on thinkers like Nietzsche and Derrida that we stop looking for a single essence or definition. Art is textual. It is a web of meanings that change based on context. Think of the word cool in 1950s and think about the word cool in nowadays. It means something different because it depends it depends entirely on when and where you say it. So Jack Rantier argues that art is really about the distribution of the sensible. It determines what can be seen and heard in society. So ultimately, this chapter tells us that asking what is art isn't about finding a dictionary definition. It's about analyzing practice. Art is a paradoxical interplay of materiality and signification. It changes because we change. Thanks for listening. Adios.